If you've been thinking about starting a podcast, then I'm going to give you 5 really good reasons to make it happen now. Hey, it's Melanie here. And as you are probably aware, as part of building up your authority as a brand and as a go-to expert, having a podcast can be a really important part, even if it's an online show or you're leveraging video in some way with a consistent presence. Having a podcast is so powerful to getting your brand amplified and to attract more clients. So I've been podcasting. I think this is going into my 11th year. I'm on my second podcast. So Amplify Your Success is actually the second podcast I started. The first one I did was a video show, and I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. And of course, technology's changed a lot in the last 10 years. So um, I really discovered a sweet spot on how to create an authority brand podcast that is such an asset to you and your business. So what I'm going to do today is I want to unpack what I see as some very powerful reasons to start a podcast. And I've talked to a lot of people over the years who just want to guest on other people's podcasts, which is also a great strategy. I think it's something that everybody can do. But having your own podcast gives you certain advantages that you miss if you're just podcast guesting. So let me unpack these for you, and then you tell me what you think. Are you going to start a podcast this year or some kind of online show? Or are you going to stick to being a guest on other people's podcasts? Now, in my opinion, and in my experience, in the years that I've had a podcast, so let me just back up and say the reason why I started a podcast at the time, I was feeling a bit like a best kept secret. I was feeling like I had this great body of work. See, I had pivoted and I changed my brand a bit. And so I was trying to kind of reignite brand awareness around the work I was doing after having a really huge growth spurt for the first 10 years of my business. And I was looking around and I was noticing that a lot of opportunities were flowing to people who had their own podcasts. And it was almost like they had this juice and this energy that caused people to pay attention to what they were doing. And when I started to really study like why a podcast is a differentiator for somebody who wants to command higher prices, who wants to be able to fill their programs, that wants to get more speaking, I realized like there are some very important influence attributes that a podcast host has that doesn't exist as a guest. And the first one is that you get a lot more opportunities. And what happens is when you are consistent with your podcast, and of course, your podcast is tied back to your brand, it's an important part of the formula I teach to be an authority brand podcast, is when you are a host, people see you having an asset. Okay. And that asset is I have a platform that people who maybe want to partner up or are looking for strategic ways to cross promote each other, they're like, hey, being on their show or being on their podcast is a great value to me. So I want to invite them to my podcast or my show or partner with them in some way. And it literally just opens a floodgate of opportunities. So when you're hosting your own podcast, people see you in that influence position. They see you as having a valuable asset, and it literally opens a door to other experts and authorities in your field. So it's a great way to open up more high profile, hot opportunities. Now, along those same lines, podcast hosts have an easier time getting booked on other people's podcasts. It's commonly known as the podcast interview swap, but it doesn't always have to be a swap. And that is that you, again, are seen in the authority position. And so it's almost like you get this fast pass through the line. Think of like if you're at Disneyland and people are like, how do I get through the really long line to get to the top of or to get to the front of the line? Well, when you have a podcast, especially a hot podcast, it'll oftentimes get you a shortcut to the front of the line and get you booked on those hot podcasts faster because those hosts are often looking for the same grace returned to them. So I have found that, kind of being the host gives you a lot of clout in that way and gives you an opportunity to get those bookings that other people are waiting a really long time for, or maybe even getting passed by. It like opens the door to get on the phone with people and have them say, "Hey, like I'd love to figure out how we can partner up together." And what the other thing that happens is people go searching, or they have their teams go searching for podcast hosts because they want to get on shows, but they also are, like it's opening doors to a lot of other speaking. So sometimes they go looking for people and your name keeps popping up because you're the host of a show that other people are sharing. So there's a lot of really valuable reasons in the podcast swapping, the speaking, just getting more opportunities. But there's some even juicier reasons that I want to get into next. And the third one is it has to do with the client attraction part of it. So I hope if you start a podcast, you really consider who the listener is and how you want to attract them. Because when you host a podcast, it literally is creating bingeable content that builds a know, like, and trust factor with your potential clients. There's a lot of ways to do this. I teach many of them in my podcast programs, like my Build an Authority Brand podcast that I'll be sharing very soon with you guys. But this idea of bingeable content, I have seen high ticket clients of mine over and over and over again. They see me out there somewhere. They find out that I host a podcast. They listen to like a whole bunch of podcasts. They'll tell me, I listened to you all weekend long. And on Monday, I booked an appointment. They booked the consult. And why is this important for you? Why is this valuable? Because this is how they get to know you. They build that trust because what you're talking about, they know, hey, they like you and they want to know more, or they're like, this is not my cup of tea, and they're gone. And over and over again, I have had clients do this binge, book, and then pay, right? Like binge, book, and pay. It's like a little formula. So that is hard to do if you don't have some kind of consumable content like that. And the other good thing, the other really, and this is all from research, right? This is not just theory. This is research. This is me asking my high ticket clients that have literally booked a consult and in the same conversation say, I'm in to a high 4 or 5 figure coaching package. They say, yeah, like I kind of knew I was going to hire you before I got on the phone, but I just wanted to really understand the details. And they are hiring me. They are committing before they ever hang up. So I know a lot of people, when they're doing these consults, they're feeling ghosted. Well, the podcast can help overcome that because they already kind of know what they're in for. They've already got your energy. Even if you're interviewing other people, because you probably noticed that I interject some solo episodes with these interviews. Now, number 4, it positions you as an authority. And why is that important? So if you caught in the guide, or if you've been following along the lives in our Facebook group here, I have found that being seen as an authority, being experienced as an authority, gives you the edge over your competition when you have something similar to someone else and they're looking for the person who they can trust to deliver results. And when you have a podcast, people recognize that there is a commitment for consistency. You are taking ownership of a conversation. You become the leader of that conversation. You showcase that you have the ability to organize a conversation that adds value. They see who you get on that podcast and they recognize, man, this person knows their stuff. It elevates your authority to be highly visible on an ongoing basis with a conversation that's relevant to them. Now, inside that statement I just made are a whole bunch of clues to how to create a podcast that becomes a client magnet for you. It's not just about producing content. There are so many key components inside of that, between what you name it, what content you produce, what your guests are, like all of this matters. It all goes inside the ingredients for an authority brand podcast that is monetizable. But the most important thing you recognize is, if you feel invisible and you feel like a best kept secret, or you feel like you're leaving so much on the table, there's more people that you can serve, there's more clients, there's more communities, there's greater reach you want to have, getting that authority positioning is really key. And the fifth reason, and if nothing else has really pulled you in, I hope this fifth one does, and that is, with a podcast, you have the ability to exponentially grow the reach of your impact. It's way more than like who I know. Like, if you know how to get your keywords right, and you know how to pick a title that's really juicy, if you know how to grow a podcast, which is one of the things I specialize in, if you know how to get listeners to consume your podcast, you can touch people all over the world. You can inspire them. You can change their life. Even if they never hire you, you can know that you're leaving a legacy behind, and that what you do is inspiring and influencing other people for the better. I mean, just think about, whether you're a Joe Rogan fan or not, just think about that this guy's got a podcast that everybody's talking about, and you have the ability to make a greater impact. So if you haven't figured it out already, I am a huge, huge fan of having a podcast. I have found it to be one of the best decisions I ever made. And I'm about to open access to what I call my Authority Brand Podcast Toolkit. It's $597 worth of tools, checklists, strategies, all designed to help you launch, grow, and monetize a podcast that has a huge impact with you as an authority and influencer. And I'm going to be offering it for a very limited time for just $27. I know it's crazy, but I really believe in podcasting. It is such a valuable tool, and I want to make it really easy and really simple and give people tools that will help. So we're not quite ready to open the doors yet. If you would like access to it, just type podcast in the comments, and I'll make sure on the day we open it up, which is just a few days away, that you get access, because we're only going to open it up for very few days, like I think 4 days. So I don't want you to miss it. But I'd love to hear before you leave, are you on board? Are you going to create a podcast that becomes a key component of your authority brand? Do you have a podcast and you want to take it to the next level? Or are you just going to stick to podcast guesting, which is also great? But tell me in the comments, where are you at, and what are you going to do to really move the needle, to attract more clients, and to really open the doors in a bigger way, so you can make that impact that I know you want to make.